Alright, so let's go into our scene and we'll save this as animation startup. And we're just going to animate a few objects in our scene. We don't have like 1,000 objects to animate in here, so we're just going to animate the globe. We'll animate this, and we'll just animate the pencil kind of rolling on paper. We have 3 objects rolling. It just adds a little bit of life to our scene as opposed to just boring scene. First thing we do when we're animating is we take our timeline here. Mine says 99, so I'll put 1 and 1. And this is going to be, let's do 120 frames. So 120 and 120. Okay. So our timeline is set up for 120 frames. We're at frame 1, that's what this guy says. And then we're just going to start with an object. So we'll start here at the Newton balls. And I want to pick the group of this ball with these 2 strings. Okay, and the little clapper down there. So I'm going to go to the outliner, open the Newton cradle, and I can see that because this one is colored this lighter blue, that it's cradle ball 7. So if I click on it, you can see my pivot is right here, geared up, ready to go. Okay, so let's go and set some keyframes. So we're going to start this up here, that's where I want it to start, and let's type in values to make it easier. And you can see how I'm at -45 in just the rotate X. The Y is here, the Z is there, zeros and zeros. So I'm going to right click on rotate X and say key selected. That sets a keyframe at frame 1 for this guy to be at 45, -45. So let's go to frame 10. Put that at 0. Right click, set a key. So here's our animation, starts here. Okay. So now we're going to go back to frame 10. I'm going to grab the last one, which is 4. Okay. So 4, I'm going to set a key on this one. At 0. Go up 10 frames. Set this to 45. Key selected. Go up another 10 frames, so now we're at 30. Set that back to 0. Okay. So now we have hit, out, hit. Okay. So let me go through the keyframes again. At frame 0, this guy is at -45. At frame 10, he's at 0. At frame 10, this guy is at 0. Frame 20, he's at 45. At frame 30, he's back to 0. So then, guess what's going to happen again? We're going to go to frame 30, where this ball is going to start to move. Keyframe the X, go up 10 frames, put it to -45, key it, go to 50, back to 0, key it, switch to 4, key it, go up 10 frames, +45, key it, 70, key it at 0, go to cradle ball 7, key this one, go to frame 80, -45, go to frame 90, back to 0. And we're doing this kind of like the long way just so that you can remember a lot of these steps. Oops, 0. Back to 7. Key it. There we go. So now if we go back and hit the rewind button, then hit play. Okay, not the world's greatest animation. So we're going to go to, I click on ball 7. I'm going to go to Window, Animation Editor, Graph Editor. And I'm going to click in the view and hit F. And what we have out here is -45s. These are all the ball coming up and going here. Here, we have all the balls coming back into this position. So I'm going to grab all the ones at 0. You see the 0 here. I'm just marking straight across and hitting this button. Okay. So now if we just watch this, just this one here, seems to have a little bit more motion to it. A little more E-motion. Let's go back to 4. And you can see that this one, same thing. I'm going to grab those bottom ones at 0 and hit linear. Okay, now it's not the best job in the world for these, but it's definitely better than it was. Okay, so that's sufficient. Wonderful. Okay, so that guy's done. No big deal. So now we'll go to this. Make sure we're at frame 1. And if we look at it, we're not really rotating in a good axis. Okay. We reset these to 0. Rotate that back. For some reason, it's kind of like, it looks like it's good now. All right. Now something funny is going to happen with this. I just want you to see it. If I click on the rotate X, you see how the rotate X is going this way. Let me make this bigger so you can see it. And the rotate Y is going this way, and the rotate Z is going that way. So we don't have a good axis to go and rotate this thing around, even though it looks like we should. Okay. Oops. And if I click on it, somehow I get this back. And if I start playing with these values, it goes away. All right. So what I need to do is hit Control A. And I'm going to go to the Earth tab here. And just choose a different one of these. Okay, I choose the next one, YZX. There we go. And what I'm seeing over here is I'm kind of watching these to see which ones rotate good. When I rotate this, you can see that only the Y is moving. If it was on here, and I click on it, you can see that all 3 are moving, which is going to cause me some issues. And even when I click on this, I get this funky thing happening. So I'm going to go back to YZX. Oops, that caused that to move. Undo. There we go. Alright, so now I can just set that key up. So I'm going to go to the Y. Key it at frame 1, right where it is. Then go up to 120. And just rotate it around a little bit. And then set another key. Okay, so now we rewind and hit play. There we go. Now I'm going to click on this again, go to Window, Animation Editor, Graph Editor, hit F. I'm going to click on this and hit Linear. Okay, it just gives it a better animation. There we go, that's beautiful. Okay, so real quick, that guy again was rotate order YZX in the attribute editor, and then we animated the Y. Okay, so back to frame 1. Let's grab our pencil, and we'll set a couple keys here. I'm going to first make sure these are nice and rounded. There we go. So 90, 0, 0. That way I know that it's kind of flat. I'm just going to nudge it up so it's actually on the paper, which is good. Alright, so I'm going to rotate this in the Y direction. Okay, but I grab the Y and you notice that the Z is moving. Sometimes it just happens to be like that. So I'm just going to use the Z. For my movement, I'm going to move it in the X direction. So right click, rotate Z, right click, translate X at frame 1, and set keys. Go to frame 120, scoot it over, roll it a little bit, and then reset those keys on those two values. And then we can click and drag. And it looks like we're rotating just not a whole lot. Let me go back in here and set maybe more. Say negative 720. Set another key. There we go. That looks better. Let's go to the graph editor again. Hit F. Grab both of these. Make them linear. Good. So there's our animation from back here. By hitting play, we see that the pencil is rolling off on the paper. The ball clappers are clapping, and the globe is spinning around. And just for fun, let's add one more, just as book falling. Okay, so I want this book to fall like it's tipping over. If I leave the pivot where it's at, it's not going to look very good. Actually, all these books look like they're inside, so let me just move those up a little bit. Except for the first one. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to take this guy and just have him like fall down. So I'm going to put his pivot over here. So I'm going to hold down DV and just move the pivot there, so that now when I rotate, he's going to fall straight. Okay, and if I look in the attribute editor, it's this rotate X that's going to do it. So it's back to frame 1. Actually, let's go to frame 60. I don't think it's going to take that long for the book to fall. We'll key select it on rotate X. Let's go to frame 100. Reset this to 90. Set a key. And then we'll go to the graph editor. And instead of doing both of these things in linear, I'm just going to grab the far right one and make that linear. So I'll just see what that looks like. Alright, let's make both linear. Alright, I'm not really liking the spacing on this. I'm going to grab this far right key, and instead of it being at 90 here, I'm just going to set this to 85. Oops, sorry, not 90. Instead of this being at 100, I'm going to set this to 85. Let's watch that again. There we go. It's not like, again, it's not the best animation, but it'll do. Just kind of give us something moving in our scene. Okay, and I even could have had it like sliding, but then we're getting into more advanced stuff, and we're not ready for it yet. Alright, so that's the animation part. It didn't take terribly too long. It might take you a couple tries just to figure out what you're doing. If you mess up on any of your animation stuff, you can just right click on it, and you can say delete selected. Okay, and then the animation's gone. Then you can just redo the animation part for that. Typically, people run into a problem because they grab like the cup, and then they set keys on the cup, and then they try to move the pencil, and they can't figure out why it's not animating. Well, because you put keys in the cup, not on the pencil. Okay, so now we have to animate a camera in here too. So panels, perspective, we're going to add a new camera. Alright, so now I'm in the new camera. It says down here perspective 1. So I'm going to click on the blue circle that's right here under the word show and render. See how there's a blue circle? Okay, and I'm just going to kind of frame this as to what I want this to look like at the beginning of my shot. I'm also going to come over to my focal length and maybe put this to 25. That way I can fit a bit more stuff in here. It gives it a little bit more of a perspective. Okay, if I put this back to just so you can see like 60, we're basically like flattening our scene out. So it's realistically in what our goal is in this. And I think in this scene I want to go with something like 25 just to add some more perspective and depth into the scene. And I think I also want to take these two guys and group them, Control G. And just rotate them a little bit. Scoot them over a little bit. There we go. So I'm not really cutting off anything in my scene. I'm adding to kind of the randomness that would be, natural in a desk scene. That's good. All right, so I'm going to click on this select camera. Make sure I'm at frame 1. Set this up for how I want to look. Say there's where we're starting. I'm going to hit S to set a key on my camera. So I hit S, sets a key. All these are salmon. I go to 120. I spin my camera around a little bit. Maybe I zoom in or pivot like this. And then I set another key with S. So now here's 1. Here's 120. So now Maya's going to figure out where they need to go. Okay, and typically it doesn't do a very good job in the middle. So I'm going to go to frame 60 and just kind of zoom out a touch. Just kind of recenter myself. And then set another key. Okay. Not terribly satisfied with that, but it'll do. I'm going to go back to the graph editor while I have the camera selected. Frame it. And I'm going to grab the beginning, make it linear. Grab the end, make it linear. There we go. So that'll do. Okay, that's very cool. Alright, so now let's save this. And let's do one more thing. Let's go to the outliner, just make sure we're all nice and organized still. Oh, we're not nice and organized. Look at all those books. Okay, let's start organizing our stuff some more. Our lights, I can just put it to a group. Call these lights. Here's our chair and blanket. So let's call this chair blanket. Here's our pencils. Control G. Here are our books. Here are place 3D textures. Left camera, we can delete that. We don't do that. Perspective 1, I'm going to rename this one Render Cam. P-Sphere 1 is something I was playing with. I can delete the P-Sphere 1 and my light, my point light that I created. Ground stage, coffee mug, pencil. Let's. I want to put this pencil here in this group, so I can just middle mouse button drag it into that group. Pencil holder, globe, old chair, books. Good, good, good. Let's turn our layers off so we know that we are back to a position where nothing is there. That's what we want. Let's turn them back on. Okay, good. Our camera is set up. Our animations are set up. So we're good. So now let's go through and render this. I'm going to click on the clapper with 2 dots. Go back to the Common tab. Give this a name. So I'm going to call this DeskRendering _ Sarcona. Enter. Okay. So I know what's the project, DeskRendering. I know whose it is, Sarcona. We're rendering these out as ifs. Name dot number dot extension name.number.extension. Our frame range is the start and the end, 1 to 120. Perspective, no, we want to render the render cam. So renderable camera is set to render cam. 960, 540, good. Change this to Maya software. And we're just going to take the quality right here up to production. Okay. Then we're going to scroll down and go to reflection under ray tracing. And lower this to 2. That should be good. So now we will save our scene again. That's good. We'll render a little snapshot. We'll see how it looks. We'll make sure everything looks pleasant. Yep, so I'm pretty much, I like the way this is looking. Everything seems to look nice and neat, especially for our first like real rendering project. This might be a little bit too orange. This might be a little bit too dark here. I'm going to fix a couple things. I'm going to add another light for this. Okay, just something little. Take this light, duplicate it, hit T, pull it around to this side, go back to that angle. There we go. Now I can see it. I don't want to wash it out, so I'm going to take the intensity down to 2. I want some shadow there. I don't want it to be crazy. Maybe 2.5, maybe even 3. I want to have a good balance of color and darkness. That's probably good there. Okay. So that looks good. I like that. I'm going to go to my last frame, do another rendering of this. Alright, so here's our last frame. I didn't say the first frame. It looks pretty good. I like the way everything's looking here. I don't have any complaints. I'm satisfied. Now if we look down here, it says render time 116. We pull out our trusty calculator. 1 minute is 60 seconds. Okay, so 60 seconds plus 16 seconds is 76 seconds. Times 120 frames is 9,120 seconds to render this out. Okay, so we can divide that by 60 seconds per minute. It'll give us 152 minutes. Divide that by 60. And this will roughly take 2.5 hours for us to render out this entire sequence. Might be a little bit more, might be a little bit less. I believe when I rendered frame 1, it only took 45 seconds. Okay, but as a good estimate, it'll take at least, or about, I guess I can say about 2 hours, 2.5 hours to render this thing out. Alright, so you definitely can't wait until the last minute to do any of this stuff because you just won't get it done. Alright, 2.5 hours doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're trying to render and you run into issues, it's going to seem like a lot. So now we're ready to go. We have to make sure our project is set. Okay, so I set my project, make sure I'm on Desk Sarcona in my work folder, I hit set. Okay, now I go up to render. Alright, I see batch render option box. Use all available processors, yes. And then batch render and close. So now this isn't going to go quick. This is going to take 2.5 hours. So obviously I'm going to end the lecture here, and then we'll pick up with putting this thing together inside of After Effects once that's all done. Okay, so I clicked on next to this big long black bar. There's a little button here. I clicked on the button. And then this brings this up, which is showing you the progress. So it says percentage of rendering done is 0%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now you might think this is going very quick, but this percentage is for, if we look down on the far right, frame number 1. That's where it's at, is frame 1. So it's about 22-25% done on frame 1. So if I go back to my desktop folder, and thinking, D drive, Icona, 2510, work. Right here it says rendering frame 2. You can see it right there. So that means it's done with frame 1. So if I go into my desk Icona, it has all my folders in here. I go inside images. Here is frame number 1. You can see frame number 2 is right there. So I double click frame number 1. And now I can see, yep, that's frame number 1. Everything looks right. I'm happy with the way it looks. Good. Let it go. Okay. If I'm not happy with the way it looks, I go to render, cancel batch rendering. I fix what I need to fix, and then I go back to render batch render. Okay. Now Maya is pretty cool in the fact that, let me save this, that if I closed Maya down right now, it would still continue rendering. I'm going to right click down here in the taskbar and go to Start Task Manager. It's going to think. There it is. And if I sort my processes by memory usage, I have Maya, RealFlow, and 2 Maya batches. I'm already rendering something else using Maya batch. Okay. But Maya and Maya batch are 2 distinct programs, or separate programs. One is actually doing the rendering. The other one is just for our working. So if I close Maya, it'll still render out. Okay. Now, one thing we want to do as we're working on our stuff, or as we're rendering our stuff, is we want to make sure that we go into the Task Manager. So I right-click Task Manager, go into Processes, right-click on Maya Batch, and say Set Priority below Normal. Okay. It's already on normal, so I want to set it below normal and hit change. And what that means is that when Maya's rendering, it's going to try to use as much of the processor as it can. But if someone comes on here and they need to use Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever else, they won't be hindered by any of that stuff. Because if someone was, let's say you rendered at the end of the class, someone else comes in, they want to use a computer and they can't because you're rendering and taking up all the computer's processing time, they'll probably restart it because they just don't know what's going on. Okay. So we want to make sure we set that priority to below normal so that that doesn't happen. All right, so that's it. So while I'm going to let this go and chug, you can monitor your renderings here. You can see this one's at 12:12 a.m. This one's at 12:12 a.m. This one's at 12:13 a.m. So I'm getting sort of kind of 2 frames a minute. Okay, and I can check these as I'm going, seeing if I'm liking them. All right, so that's it. The next lecture will be on putting this together and wrapping it up.